Hello, I'm Bruce Zimmerman, and this is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week. Now, let's talk a little bit about Clematis. Now, recently, there's been a lot of breeding going on. Most of the good breeding of the great Clematises are by Evanston, and he's still breeding happily to this day, so it's not going to end soon. And what we're seeing is a lot of unusual Clematis, some of the more unique ones. He's famous for bringing out Clematis that belong in containers, and therefore they live in containers. So you sink your container of Clematis every winter and lift it up and trim it back, and usually down to about no more than 18 inches. And then it just pops out, blooms several times throughout the summer, sometimes, depending on varieties, completely always in bloom somehow. I don't know how he does it, but he does breed great Clematis. So when you see an Evanston Clematis, you know that you're buying a really good one. So remember that, okay? Now, Clematis generally, in the usual way of growing them, require shade on their roots. They require a pH 6 to 7.5. Now that's high. Most people say between 6 and 7. 7.5 is really high, and you'll probably have a hard time finding a Clematis growing there, but they do it. There is some that will actually grow even, let's say, more acidic than that. And that is all the way down to 4.5, which is almost in blueberry range. So you just don't know exactly which way they're going to go. But generally, if you can hit in the middle, around 6.5, you're pretty safe. The other thing that you should know is they hate wet feet. So don't plant them in wet conditions, but keep them moist. And they like the sun. Now, they do not like to be trampled or abused because the stems are fairly brittle. So don't do that. They do have a few diseases, and one of them is basically Clematis wilt, which means the whole stem goes completely dead. Cut it out, and usually new growth comes up from the base. Not always. But if you get it quickly, you'll find you can minimize it, and you can grow Clematis quite successfully. Now, some Clematis are trimmed down in the spring, some are not. Some bloom on new wood, some bloom on old wood. And then there's some Clematis which will bloom the first set single, the second set double in the number of petals on each flower. So you've got a very wide range of different types of Clematis, and we haven't even got into the species types yet, that you can go and put into a garden to give a good focal point. Now, when you put them into a garden, they can go on fences, they can go on trellises. I have seen some people weave them through other plants, particularly evergreens. I find that this works quite well on larger, older evergreens, so you make it try this as well. Those evergreens like a slightly acidic soil, so that might be the deciding factor. Now let's start with some of the ones that have been around forever. Let's just mention a few so you know what the typical ones are. And the typical ones that have been around are usually the Jackmanii varieties, and they are, of course, some of the great ones. There's red Jackmanii, Gypsy Queen, and several. There's even Elba, which is Jackmanii, Elba, Superba, you name it, Star of India. They're all older variety of the Jackman group. and they all work really well. They're the ones you most likely are going to see. Now, I've had good success with Ramona, which is more of a lavender blue, so you want to look for that one. Belle de Walking is sort of a double. It is an interesting one in the fact that it has been around a long time. It does get 8 to 12 feet tall. It blooms spring to summer. So you're looking at a fully double, more or less mauve fades to white. Really quite a nice one. And you could add this one. And there is also Duchess of Edinburgh, which is another double but pure white as well. So if you're looking for doubles, which look sort of like a little rose, then you may want to try that as well. So those are ones that have been around a long time. Ramona, Comtesse de Bouchard has been around a long time. And then what else has been around a long time? Of course, the purple Jackman eyes. Etoile Violet. Lady Betty Belfour is another one that's been around a long time. So therefore, they're more, how shall I say, reliable, dependable. The President, which is another one that is very large and on the bluey purple side. Of course, Ernest Markham, probably one of the first really decent red. It's been around for at least 30, 40 years. Ville de Lyon, which is another one that's been around a long time with a long bloom time, spring through summer. Again, 12 to 14 feet. This one's going to get bigger, and you may like that one. The Ernest Markham gets 12 to 15 feet. So, yeah, good ones that have been around for a long time. I mentioned the Duchess of Edinburgh, and it's going to get 10 12 feet tall. It's going to bloom spring through summer. Henry Eye. Now this one is gorgeous if you've got it into bloom. Think of probably one of the largest blooming clematis there is. The flowers can be I've seen them well over 6 inches across. Pure white with black stamens. So very pretty. Height can be anywhere from 10 to 15 feet. It's been around so long that it's considered reasonably, let's put it this way, common, okay? But when you say common, you don't mean just common. This is just a really good one that's been around a long time. Now, then there's the others that are newer. The Evanston we talked about earlier. There's one that I think you should go looking for because I think it's going to really, let's put it this way, it's going to turn my crank so it'll probably turn yours. It's called Avant-Garde. Think of red petals with the centers in pink. Now this is a pinky rosy red center, and then the very center in more towards the yellow, right? And the center is, of course, the smaller petals that are just modified flower parts. Same thing happens with Empress, except Empress looks to me like a pink Nellie Moser, okay? But with the center very, very highly fimbriated, okay? If you know what that means, it just means whole bunch of little wee thin spikes. Crystal Fountain, same thing, except more of the lavender blue. And again, the center is green with white tips. So it'll probably change color from green to white in the center as it matures. Again, another one that you want to go and take a look at. There are a few, if you're looking for more of a bicolor, which are always attractive and people notice them simply because it's hard to get a bicolor clematis that is so strongly bicolored that people can actually spot it from a distance. Little Duckling is one of those. And with it, Suzanne. The little duckling is exactly that. It is a smaller clematis with the rosy red centers that fade out towards the edge into a creamy pink. How's that? Suzanne has more of a stripe down the center with the creamy edges, and it's more of a semi-double. In other words, instead of having, let's say, 4 petals on it, it'll have probably 6 to 8. So some of the center is a little fuller, but not fully double. Elizabeth, if you're looking for a double that is more open, a light pink bicolor violet is very, very pretty. Belda Walking, and it is a double that's been around for a long time, just so you know. There is one that I think you should try, and it's one that I have not tried, and that is Shoan. Now, this is a blue clematis, very large. It's got the light sort of white stamens in the center, more of a blue than a lavender, with a lighter pale blue stripe down the center, almost white, a whitey blue, if there is such a color. So those are the ones that I think you should take a look at for certain. There are a few others that I think you can consider as well. And Polish Spirit, I have not had great success with Polish Spirit, but they tell me most people do. You want an unusual looking clematis? Tie-dye. Try that one. And when you're going through them and you're looking for something really unusual, go look for the clematis, which is yellow, called Helios. It's more towards the species, and it will give you, it looks like yellow wings hanging down cross. So it opens up more than the old Tangutica. So it gives a bigger show, but at the same time, it is a smaller one. Tanguta can get really out of bounds. This one is only 6 to 8 foot, so take a look at this one as well. So these are some of the clematis that are going to be available in 2017, plus the ones that have been around a long time and are very reliable and dependable. And this is what I will say to you. Make sure that when you're out buying clematis, that you do place them in the right conditions, and make sure that you have a warranty, because a lot of clematis take a while to get established and very often will set back badly if not planted properly. I'm Bruce Zimmerman. This is the Open Line Garden Show podcast for this week.